The recent raid of the premises of Ukrainian businessman Timur Mindich by the National Anti-Corruption Bureau in Ukraine marked the beginning of the country's attempt to tackle the issue of corruption standing in the way of Ukraine's EU accession. Even though Mindich's detention was unsuccessful, the clampdown might have broader implications as anti-corruption prosecutors initiated an internal probe into a possible leak of information leading to the suspect's escape. Sir Robin Niblett, Distinguished Fellow at the Chatham House, joins me on the program to discuss how the latest developments could affect Ukraine's international profile and domestic affairs. Good evening, sir, and thank you for joining me on the program.
Good evening.
So, in the latest news, we've learned that Prime Minister Julia Sviridенko dismissed the Supervisory Board of Energoatom. That's the news from about an hour. Is this a sign of bigger troubles for Ukraine to come?
Well, this is bad timing, to put it mildly, at a time when Ukrainian forces are under severe assault in Pokrovsk, and the Eastern Front is looking vulnerable because of a lack of sufficient troops, amongst other things. At the same time as Russia has increased significantly, as we know, its attack on Ukrainian energy infrastructure, even hitting substations of nuclear power plants, to have at the same time this internal investigation taking place, is very bad timing. Bad timing domestically, obviously, because it undercuts confidence in the government at a critical moment going into what's going to be a very difficult winter, but also internationally at a time where international peace negotiations over the future of Ukraine are on hold, should we say, with Donald Trump having lost interest again for a while in the Ukraine conflict. I think the timing is very unfortunate for Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. So this clampdown and possibly the ones that are going to follow when it comes to this anti-corruption case, do you think it's really about fighting corruption, or is it also about the domestic politics?
Look, I don't have enough inside information to know definitively. What it would strike me is that this, as we understand it, is being a long-standing investigation. It's been going on for roughly 15 months, according to the prosecutor's office. Obviously, it is unfortunate also that there was an effort to try and bring the prosecutor's office and the anti-corruption group that leads these investigations under presidential authority back in July. We have to assume, obviously, the negotiation at that point had been going on for close to a year. Having kept the anti-corruption office independent of presidential authority, now we have this big exposure of ministers that are close to the government. So, I think my sense is this is the continuation of a long-standing investigation. There have been reports that I've come across in the past of suspicion that Ukraine's energy infrastructure in particular had not been particularly well protected. There's been a rush to try and provide it with hardening and the capacity for it to withstand the kinds of attacks the Russians have been undertaking. That kind of rush often leads to scope for corruption to take place. So, look, the way I'm reading it is it's a genuine anti-corruption investigation, and it's ensnaring some people close to the government if they're proven.
You mentioned this earlier before in our conversation, but how do you think that this situation in Ukraine is actually going to influence its standing on the international stage in face of the ongoing war? I mean, we've seen only but a few months ago Prime Minister Julia Sviridенko going to Washington, signing the rare air minerals deal, something very important for Ukraine, one of what was supposed to be security guarantees, and now we're having this situation within the government. How do you think Ukraine is going to recover from this?
I mean, if I were to be a little cynical, I would say that from the point of view of the Trump administration, this isn't a big deal. As long as American companies aren't being affected, the way the Trump administration approaches this, its approach to the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, in a way is to not be particularly interested in it if it is not affecting American companies. So personally, I just don't think this is going to have much of an impact on the Trump administration's approach to the conflict, or its willingness to continue supplying the kind of intelligence that's necessary for Ukraine forces, or for its willingness, to the extent that it can, to continue allowing European governments and the Ukrainian government to purchase US military equipment. So I think on the US side, my reading of it would be that this will not be fundamental or a big issue. Where it worries me more is on the European side. And on the European side, we have a discussion going on right now inside the EU to the extent to which Ukraine can start to undertake some of the negotiation chapters to be able to begin its accession process sort of informally, without yet there having been formal acceptance by all of the government to open the negotiations. And this will simply provide ammunition to governments in Bratislava, in Hungary, in Budapest, to say that, oh, well, look, why are we opening negotiations with a government that's getting involved in where there's potential corruption? The effort to accelerate the process of taking on EU regulations, which is so important to be able to kind of drive that positive European connection to Ukraine, will undoubtedly be affected by this. It'll give ammunition to those who do not want to get the EU closer to Ukraine.
This seems like a certain sort of paradox, because it seems to be the case that by taking this very step to satisfy the EU in its EU accession road, this could actually backfire for Ukraine, don't you think?
Well, it plays two ways. As you're saying, it shows that the government is taking corruption seriously. It also shows, if these allegations are proven to be true, that corruption penetrates very deeply. This is a very senior minister. And a very close ally, you mentioned Timur Mindic himself, close ally of the president. And, these are, how can I put it? Yes, it looks good that investigations are taking place into anti-corruption, but when you see it so close to the top levers of power, it's going to raise doubts. How much more will they discover? And as European governments are looking to commit long-term funding to Ukraine, they want to make sure that money's well spent. So it's going to be a rocky period, undoubtedly. I think what is worrying is the level of this investigation and the kind of people who are being brought into it. This is not generalized corruption that is being exposed. It's high level, and that will, cause concerns, I think, in Brussels and some European capitals.
We've also heard some domestic voices. We've heard from former Ukraine's President Petro Poroshenko's party that called for the cabinet of ministers to resign. Quite a particular request to have. Do you think that the cabinet of ministers is actually going to consider that President Zelensky is actually going to consider this possibility of taking that very drastic step during such a difficult time?
And hard for me to predict. Obviously, there's no love lost between the two of them. And President Zelensky and his government have undertaken prosecutions against Petro Poroshenko in recent months. So there's a feeling of tit for tat going on here between these two very important leaders. And it's, again, not something positive to have at this stage. The Russian trolls and bot farms will be trying to deepen the divisions, create a sense of uncertainty around President Zelensky, and clearly any kind of internal disputes create additional worry. You've got pressure now to talk about some type of, to come back on elections, the idea that maybe elections should be undertaken in 2026, even if there isn't a ceasefire, for elections to take place under a moment of internal scrutiny of this sort, again, is going to make life a lot more difficult. On the positive side, you can say, yes, at least these things are being investigated. This is a democracy, and in any democracy, there will be investigations of corruption. Corruption does not just take place in Ukraine. We've got plenty of EU governments that have, which have had similar problems. I'm thinking of this government of Spain right now, where close allies of Pedro Sanchez have just been prosecuted. So I think, there's an opportunity here to say, we're being European, we're being transparent, we're investigating these issues. It's just, Spain isn't involved directly in a war against its own country at the time. And therefore, these issues can be taken more as just the backwards and forwards of democracy. But in Ukraine, it's much, much more serious.
Thank you very much, sir. Robin Niblett, Distinguished Fellow at the Chatham House, was my guest here on World News Tonight. Thank you very much for joining me. And so this would be all for now. Thank you for joining us here. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska, and I hope to see you back here on TVP World for more news and features in just a moment. Good night.